Hello, everybody out there in internet land. Doa and Charmer back with another episode of Ice Cave Radio, and this is an exciting one because we got off track a little bit, Charmer. We were traveling, we were doing other card game events that we had some casting obligations for. It was a lot of fun, but it did kind of throw us off as far as being consistent with the show and the content, everything. But it was good in a way, because we were doing just a lot of episodes where it was just spoiler reviews. And while that is a ton of fun, I think I speak for both of us where it's very fun to just do theory crafting around all the cards that come out. We kind of got off of being able to do topics on each show, which I think is kind of how a podcast functions better. So what we've decided to do is go back to a topic-based show for the time being, find a way to record some spoiler content a little bit later, as the set comes closer, and we're only a little over 2 weeks away now from Shadows of the Galaxy. But for today, Charmer, today we're going to talk about the leaders in Shadows of the Galaxy and how you want to approach them for the purpose of playing them in the pre-release sealed events that are starting next week. So that's going to be a ton of fun. Before we get to all that, how's it going, Charmer? What have you been up to? It's been a couple weeks.
I am doing well. I have been up to not enough Star Wars playing. I think that's the other reason I'm really excited to get back to this, because you and I were kind of talking before we started recording that we haven't been to our locals recently either, because we were traveling and doing, these other obligations, these other things for other card games. And so you and I are very excited to get back to our locals as well as back to our Star Wars content. And that is the part that I want to focus on, not the other stuff, because it's been ups and downs. It's good and bad. I did well at the Flesh and Blood Calling. Then I had some card trouble, had some travel trouble. I want to put all that behind me. And instead, I want to focus on the good stuff, which is this podcast. It is the Star Wars Unlimited card game. And it's, of course, our cave pull of the week.
Except that we're not going to talk about a cave pull of the week.
Yeah, normally there'd be a transition here, except this time not so much.
All right, so I decided, so we had half of the leaders' showcase cards revealed, and I saw that, and I was like, okay, they very in my infinite wisdom, I was like, they very clearly only released half of them because they're going to wait a little bit and then show us the other half. So I'm like, okay, well, let's just make that the cave pull this week, because I was even talking to Xander a little bit at FFG about the showcases, about which ones we liked, and all that. And that gave me the idea. I was like, all right, well, yeah, they did half of them. They must have done half for a reason, right? So I'll just make the cave poll. Which one of these are you looking for the most? And I did put an option in there for, I'm holding out for the other reveals. And then before I had a chance to, or like the day after I posted, actually, they revealed like 4 or 5 more. And I'm like, come on. And so, the results are kind of invalid at this point. I checked the results today. Yeah. The second highest thing was I'm waiting for the other reveals. So clearly,
exactly,
there's a lot of other ones to be excited about. We've got a lot of really good showcase leaders this time around, of course. And so I decided to scrap the cave poll for this week. Thanks to everybody that voted in that. But we're going to revisit that exact poll question once the showcase leaders are all revealed again. So, what can I say? I was deceived by the power of the not the dark side necessarily, but
no, that's what it was.
Yeah, the dark side. I don't want to call it the thread.
Xander is very clearly a Sith in plain sight. That's
maybe,
what I'm saying.
Maybe, yeah. I haven't seen him and Smilo Ren in the same place at the same time. That's all I can say. You hear that's what they're calling the villain on Acolyte now? Smilo Ren.
No,
which I think is a great name for that.
It is actually a pretty great name for the Stranger, mostly because his helmet does kind of look like the Knights of Ren helmets, right? It has that same kind of look. And then I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole, but just some of the things that they have said leads me to believe that this is supposed to be have some additional Knights of Ren tie-ins down the line between like music choices and some of the other stuff, but interesting. Well, I go very in depth about my thoughts on the Acolyte. If you would like to hear those on a different podcast I do called Nerd Legion, shout out to my other podcast. We had a lot of thoughts about that show. We covered the first 3 episodes.
The episode released a few days ago, so you can go check that out if you want to hear more. But we're here to talk about. I got us off track. My bad. We're here to talk about card games instead. Star Wars card games, and we got to get into it because we're limited a little bit time wise. So I think I'm ready to just jump right into the leaders and just kind of go through. The plan is to just sort of go through the leaders leader by leader, talk about how we think they're going to perform in sealed, how we would build them, what cards to maybe look out for, and we'll just kind of try to get through all 18 here in the next 90 minutes or so. So
well, we have to get through them even faster than that because we also have a special unboxing that we're going to do.
That's right. Well, should we just do that now? Should we just do that now?
I mean, we could do that now.
Let's just do it
that's
now.
What you want to do. Okay,
I'm going to keep forgetting. Because I'm too excited to talk about the leaders, but this is also exciting. So, to set the stage, Fantasy Flight has generously sent us this large cardboard box, and they had to send it to one of us. So, they already had Charmer's address on file, so I'm like, go ahead, send it over there. That sounds good. And so he's got it. We are thousands of miles away from each other, but I will open it vicariously through him. Give him a chance to open the box. I'll do play-by-play for that while we wait. He's cut it open.
Dude, you're not gonna believe this. You're not gonna believe this.
All right.
Inside the box.
Yes.
Is another box.
Another box.
Love it. I love it when they do this.
There's always another mystery. Look at this. Let's see the box. Show me the box.
All right, but seriously, I do love it whenever people send
That is cool. Look at that.
My wife makes fun of me because I save all of the boxes that I've ever gotten, like anything gaming related in. So like I have stuff from the Arcane rollout and Artifact rollout and all sorts of stuff. All right, let's see what's in this box.
I saved a lot of those, but then a lot of them ended up getting jettisoned during moving because you just can't carry all that stuff. But Charmer's opening the box right now. It was a lovely box with the Star Wars Unlimited logo, and look at this. What do we have inside the box, Charmer? It looks like quite a bit. Wow, look at that. Okay.
All right. Here's what we're gonna do so that I can get the better viewer. I'm gonna move the microphone.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be slightly off camera because nobody wants to see my dumb face anyway. They want to see the stuff. And if you're listening, don't worry, we will describe it. So first and foremost, a very nice heartfelt note. Says, thank you for your support of Star Wars Unlimited. We are so excited to share this collection of Set 2 Shadows of the Galaxy cards and accessories with you to enjoy. We truly hope you enjoy this new set of Star Wars Unlimited as much as we enjoyed creating and playing it every day. Sincerely and with gratitude, your friends at Fantasy Flight Games, GameGenic, and Asmodee.
Exciting. So we have, I see the promo Grogu in there, and that's a Darksaber playmat. It looks like.
So this is a Darksaber playmat.
Cool.
Which is one of the fantastic pieces. You are correct. So one of the event exclusive Grogus.
Look at that. Is that signed?
But this is signed.
Wow.
But
can you read their handwriting?
Yeah, well, that's what I was trying to figure out. I think because it's also in cursive, I think this might be Danny Schaefer's initials and Jeremy Zwern's.
Okay. Hold it up to the camera. Hold it up to the camera. Maybe I can see it. Let's see if we can figure this out. Yeah. Yeah, well, it looks like there's a couple of them.
There's a silver. Yeah, there's silver is what I think is Danny Schaefer's.
It looks like there's more than two. Looks like there's more than two signatures. Isn't there one near the top too?
Oh yes, there is, and that I think is that's Tyler Parrott up there for sure. So I think it's those three.
Okay. Wow, that's neat.
Yeah, cool. That's actually that's fantastic.
Wow, three of the best. All right.
And then still we have some sleeves. We have the Rey sleeves, as well as the Kylo Ren sleeves.
Nice. Wow, a lot of sleeves in there.
And then finally the new yellow colored sleeves.
Oh, the Yord Horde represent. As they say,
yeah, Yord Horde represent. One of the soft crates with the Rey art. I actually think this is double-sided, if I remember.
Okay.
Yeah, it's showing it here on the side. So this is the one that's double-sided. On one side is Rey, and on the other side is Kylo Ren.
Okay, very cool.
We also have a pre-release kit, which
Wow.
is very timely since we're about to talk about pre-release leaders. So as we have the discussion, maybe I'll open this and we can look through the leaders and talk about.
Well, here's what I say we do. Not we'll give you a little glimpse of how the sausage is made here. I would suggest actually we do a separate video where you and I open that and then go over what we would build with it. That sounds like a whole separate video to me. How many packs you got there?
Yes. So there are 5 packs here.
Okay, so those I think we should open at least one of those right now.
We'll at least open one of those, and then finally the 2-player starter.
All right, nice.
And then a nice box because again I love boxes.
If you want to package it all up again, just carry it with you like that.
All right, so. I actually agree with you. I think that we should do a separate video where we go through and maybe even do like deck building, as you were saying, right?
Yeah.
We'll make it a longer form thing. Say, hey, if you're going to your pre-release, this is, a sample pool. Far more accurate that way as well, instead of doing one after a pre-release. I think that's a fantastic idea. But I also agree with you. We have to open at least one of these packs.
We got it.
I would argue.
So we were.
I would argue we might need to open 3 because we now know who are on the front. We have Lando, Boba Fett, and Bo-Katan are the 3 art choices on the packs.
Nice. Let's. Can I choose which one we open first?
Absolutely.
And if it's a showcase, can I claim it? If I choose,
depends on which character it is. There's one I would
showcase yet.
Which one do we want, sir?
Oh, which one? The only one I want the most, showcase wise or pack wise.
Well, which pack do you want me to open?
Let's go Boba Friend.
Boba Friend.
Boba Fett Daimyo. Yeah, I call him Boba Friend because he's friendly Boba Fett. And the showcase that I'm probably most looking for in the set right now. Not to spoil the cave poll from a week now or whatever, but probably Cad Bane, I would say. He's just a really
I would have guessed that about you. All right, you ready? I haven't looked.
Leader. Okay, what do we got? Oh, okay.
It's Boba Friend.
He's in there. All right, common leader. So you'll see him a lot. Leader.
Yeah. Very fitting. Jabba's palace.
Oh, that's sick.
And then the new shield, which features another person in Mandalorian armor.
Very nice.
All right, so we have a mercenary company, which we now know from very recently was a reprint.
Okay.
We have a daring raid, which is a card I'm very excited about.
Yes. What is that? That is I don't have all the
moment of
yet.
Glory.
Oh yeah,
the give a unit +4/+4 for the face.
Right.
This is the Foundling, excuse me, the one that gives the Mandalorian trait is what I was starting to say. And then the new Mandalorian unit that has Smuggle, the Night Owl Skirmisher.
Nice. Oh, and that card,
Sorry, my foil is peeking out at the back, so we're trying not to ruin it. Moisture Farmer.
One of the best cards in the set, I'm just going to say. I'm pretty sure. That card is... I mean, dude, it's a 1 for 0.
I know. It's just something I never thought I would hear anybody say. Right?
I know,
Moisture
right?
Farmer,
I'm calling it now. I'm calling it now. One of the best ones.
Wookiee Warrior.
All right. Interesting. It's a Wookiee. It's a Wookiee stacked pack. It looks like
it is a Wookiee stacked pack because this is a fugitive Wookiee. Mm-hmm. And then we have our new neutral Mandalorian friend that I'm actually very high on, Mandalorian Warrior.
Oh, it's Werner Herzog. Look at that.
Yes. And so now I should be into the uncommons at this point, right?
Yeah,
so we have the client.
Mm-hmm.
And then the fun new starship, Valiant Assault Ship.
Mm-hmm.
This is the lurking TIE Phantom, if I remember correctly, that was recently revealed. Yep.
That's
lurking
right.
TIE Phantom.
What's that? I can't read that from here.
Mandalorian armor.
Oh,
is the rare.
Nice. All right. And what's your foil
and then
there?
Crosshair was the foil.
A rare foil, right? He's a rare, isn't he?
He's an uncommon.
Uncommon, okay.
Which still blows my mind because he has such a strong ability
I was gonna say,
uncommon.
I remember him being rare quality, so all right. Not a bad pack to start things off with. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
I was wondering if we were gonna see any cards that hadn't been revealed yet.
Yeah, I know. I was having that thought too. I was like, oh man, we might have to edit this.
I was gonna say, yeah, if we see anything, we have to ask if that's. Hey, they mailed it out to us. Yeah, it's exactly. It's out there. They sent it to us.
Yeah, they did send it to us.
Well, it's probably a lot like we did the celebration event before the game launched about a few weeks before, and at that point it was like whatever you opened in your packs, it was fair game to just get to spoil on your social media or whatever. So I would imagine same thing here. Who knows? Either way, fun pack to start off with. Thanks to Fantasy Flight for sending that out to us. We'll have to figure out a way to divvy that up later on, but that is awesome. Got some packs to open, and again, I think look ahead for that sealed strategy deck building video as we break down an actual sealed pre-release box and build a deck.
Kit. I'm excited about that.
Yeah, we got to shoot that next day or two now. Cool. All right. Well, on that note, let's keep the Shadows of the Galaxy chat going and jump right into leaders and talk about how we would approach each one in pre-release. So I'm going to swap right over to our 2-box here. I'm going to bring it up. First one, it's Powdered Toast Saxon. Gar Saxon. He's got that face.
It's Gary Busey Saxon.
That's
Gary
right.
Saxon.
Gary Saxon. I love this card. And actually, the thing is I was thinking about this today because I'm also preparing a little bit more of an in-depth look at the common leaders for our Patreon right now. As we record this, it'll be out by the time this episode airs. But this guy is really interesting because he puts attacks on your opponent, putting bounties on your units, right? Because the leader ability is each friendly upgraded unit gets +1/+0. And it doesn't specify friendly upgrades. It's just any upgrades. And that's important because there are other cards in the set that work or don't work depending on if it is a friendly upgrade or not on your units. For instance, Finn is a great example of that. You can't turn your opponent's bounties into shield tokens. That obviously would just be too busted. So this guy actually does put a tax on your opponent who wants to play bounties, in that if they decide to play a bounty on your unit, then your unit is going to be able to clap back with a little bit more damage is what I'm saying. So in a pre-release environment, in a sealed environment, that alone is like, all right, if a lot of people are going to be flinging bounties around, maybe not a terrible leader to run. What do you think?
I really like this because specifically in Vigilance, you very often have a lot of shielded units, and shields count as an upgrade. And one of the trade-offs that you traditionally see for units that have shielded is that they very often have lower stats to make up for the fact that they are well protected.
Yeah.
But this can potentially make some of your shielded units suddenly better at trading up or getting even more value. So just thinking about stuff from the first set, right? If you were taking this leader and pairing it with Cunning, for example, from the first set, and you had like a Crafty Smuggler, because I think that's the best way to articulate this example. You got a 2/2 unit, but it gets a shield, so that's not as statistically powerful as your standard 2/3 or a 3/2. But suddenly with Gar Saxon, he plays essentially as a 3/2 as long as he has that shield, so he can trade into something bigger than himself and then stick around with a body after the fact. So
yeah.
I think that this is a potentially very strong leader. And yeah, when you open your pool, you're looking for not just your cards with upgrades, but also cards that generate upgrades. So you're looking for shields, you're looking for experience, tokens, anything like that, where you slap it on a unit and it counts as being upgraded.
Yeah, and I think you can look at it a couple different ways, right? The first way is, do you have a good amount of upgrades in there that you'd want to play on your own units to enable this? Does it seem like, do you get a vibe from your opponents at the event that they're excited about playing bounties? If you get that vibe, then maybe you rock Gar Saxon as well. But the main thing I like about this is that it's kind of a global ability for your side of the board, essentially, right? It's an always-on ability. And leaders that have always-on abilities that don't cost anything are going to just kind of naturally be stronger in a lot of cases in a sealed format, right? Because where you have a more limited card pool, and we'll flip to the leader side here to check that out too, where you have a more limited card pool and you have less consistency in decks, any element of consistency you can introduce is going to give you that much more strength in that sort of format. So look for those always on abilities or abilities that don't cost anything. I think that's a big thing with playing in a sealed pool, or draft for that matter, but especially sealed, I think, where you really don't have much control over the cards you have access to. So, and then his flip side is important as well. He's a 4/7. Each friendly upgraded unit gets +1/+0 as they do on the front side, but They also gain a when defeated, you may return an upgrade that was attached to this unit to its owner's hand. And so my question on that is, in the order of operations for bounties, if your opponent has a bounty on your unit and it dies, can you do you get a chance to do the order your when defeated and send their bounty back before it would go off? And the answer to that, I don't know 100%. There's a little bit of speculation because we're kind of waiting for the rules doc to come out with how all the bounties interact with that sort of thing, order of turn operations. But if that is the case, where especially if it's your turn and you have, priority or whatever, I can't remember exactly what it's called in this game, then that sounds like it'd be quite good if you want to make a trade and just send that bounty back, right? Sure, they can play it on something else, but at least you don't give it to them,
Yeah,
what do you think?
I mean, that would be incredibly strong. My initial reaction is I don't think it'll work that way solely because the text on the bounties, or the bounty keyword, I guess I should say, is a when defeated or captured. And this ability is also when defeated. So in my mind, the defeated part has already happened. And so you would then need to resolve all of the defeated triggers. And so even if you send it back, I think it's still like, for lack of a better, way to say it, on the stack. I know that's a Magic term, so if you have never played Magic, that might not make sense to you. But I think that they're both triggering, and thus they would still both need to be resolved. That's my gut reaction. Much like you, I'm waiting for the official rules, but I don't think that you could get out of the bounty thing. But even without that, this is such a strong ability in a sealed environment because you might be playing Gar Saxon, for example, because you didn't open any other Vigilance Villainy leaders, but you had a really good card pool for that. But you could still get a lot of value out of even just one upgrade, right? If you have one upgrade and you can use that on a unit and you do a value trade, you trade up, right?
Yeah.
You return that to your hand and then you replay it on another small unit and then that attacks and then you trade up and then you return that to your hand and you replay it. So you can get a lot of mileage out of even just one upgrade for as long as Gar Saxon is deployed. And I think that should not be overlooked.
Yeah, I wonder how that's going to end up being ruled, because it's good on its own, like you said, to just bounce your own upgrades around between your units. But I do kind of like the idea that you might have like one leader out there that's kind of anti-bounty in a way, because I could see it your way, but I could also see it where if we're resolving all the when defeateds, if the when defeated for Gar Saxon ability happens first and it sends its back, then it doesn't exist in play anymore to happen. So I don't know. I'm curious how they're going to rule that, actually. I could see it going either way. So that's why I want to be very clear that when we're talking about some of this stuff, we're going to be doing some speculation because, again, we don't know all the details of how different interactions with the new abilities, new keywords is going to work. So there's going to be a little bit of theory crafting here, a little bit of speculation. So take some of this with a grain of salt. But the core sort of like message here is that he's good with upgrades. He's good at semi-counteracting the bounties that your opponent plays on you because it makes your stuff stronger. So easily a unit worth running for sealed, for sure. All right, moving on to Kira, a rare leader. So the rare leaders, you're not going to see as much on the other side of the table, and for you as an option as well. So we'll still talk about it, but I feel like the common leaders and the starter leaders are the ones that are really worth more conversation. But
I do think go ahead. That you're correct. But I would even go a step further with this one and say, I think that this one definitely needs a lot more deck building to take advantage of it. Sure. I would be surprised if you ever had a situation where you opened enough in a sealed pool to like really say Kira is my leader of choice.
Yeah. And
this is such an interesting leader, but it requires a lot to get the value here.
I think what you'll notice too, if you look at what leaders are rare and what leaders are not rare in a set, it's not really, the rarity doesn't really seem to be determined on necessarily the strength of the leader. It seems more to be determined, to me anyway, on how useful that leader is in a limited environment. So I think they want the leaders that are better and limited to be on the common side so that you have a chance to play those more often. And then the leaders, like you said, that require a little bit more deck building. Kira, I think Hunter is rare as well. or if you think about like Han Solo in set 1, those kind of leaders that require a little bit more deck building, that are more kind of aimed at a constructed setting, those are the ones given the rare tag, maybe mostly for the purpose that they don't show up more in limited, which I kind of like, actually. I think that's a kind of a smart way to use rarity to sort of craft a limited format, because you're going to be able to get those leader cards if you want them. It's not hard to obtain rare leaders in this game, right? So I like that. If that is the case, I like that that's the thought process. I should ask, because I actually don't know, but it certainly seems that way.
Oh, it totally is. I can answer that for you right now. I know, knowing this dev team and the way that they have crafted these two sets, I guarantee they will say yes. And that goes back to,
I'd be surprised if they didn't.
Yeah, when we were covering some of the earlier spoiler cards, there were several times where I said, like, this card I think is a legendary, not because of straight power level, but because it would be a nightmare if it showed up too often in limited, right?
Oh, yeah.
I think that's very similarly the thought process with some of those rarities.
Or cards like Endless Legions too, right? Where it's cards that you're maybe going to be making a whole deck around, right? And you're not going to want that card showing up in limited, because it's just going to be like one less card that's actually usable. So anyway, Kira, we'll go over really quickly. Pay 1, exhaust her, deal 2 damage to a friendly unit, then give a shield token to it. On her flip side, she's 0/8, has grit. Interesting ability: when you deploy, heal all damage from each unit, then deal damage to each unit equal to half its remaining HP, rounded down. So, definitely wants to take advantage of a lot of grit stuff, but like you said, really requires, I think, some more tight deck building and setup to make her work. So, probably not as great in a limited environment.
Yeah, especially with this set, because like I'm trying to think of the units you would want to take advantage, and I just don't land there with Kira, because a lot of the Wookiees are also heroism.
Yes.
Not to say that they're not available Wookiees, but a lot of the ones that I think really want to run are also heroism, and I think that hurts her as opposed to say the Han Solo from this set.
Yeah, Han is much more properly equipped to work Wookiees into the deck, which why wouldn't he be? But let's move on.
Right.
To Finn, another rare leader. Defeat a friendly upgrade on a unit. If you do, give a shield token to that unit. He flips on 5. And on his flip side, he's a 4/6. On attack, you may defeat a friendly upgrade on a unit. If you do, give a shield token to that unit. Another leader that seems to want a little bit more tight deck building, because you're going to be looking for things that, produce their own XP tokens, or, have a bunch of cheap upgrades on there to play and then turn into shield tokens when you need them. That said, I do think depending on your sealed pool, it would be easier to play Finn than Kira. Again, depending on if you get a lot of cheap upgrades, this may be a leader you decide you're equipped to run. So I wouldn't write him off right away when you open him. I could see this leader being used and sealed, if you open it and have the right cards.
Yeah, and I could also see... this goes for both leaders, but I see it more so with Finn. If you open a card pool and you just really like the cards for certain aspects, this leader is good enough to still play it and then just run whatever base you need to cover that. Kira, I still think is harder, because she has her on deploy that you can't play around, right? Finn, worst case scenario, you still get a 4/6 body, and if the on attack never matters, it never matters. It's no harm, no foul.
Yeah.
Kira still requires you to play around her on deploy. So even if you want to run her just for the aspects, there's more to it than that. So I think Finn is fine if you didn't open array or whatever and you're trying to cover your aspects. That's totally reasonable.
Indeed. Let's move on to Ray. Speaking of Ray, action, pay 1 resource, exhaust, give an experience token to a unit with 2 or less power. She flips on 6, becomes a 2/6 with restore 3, and on attack, you may give an experience token to a unit with 2 or less power. Like you said, I think, tailor-made for limited, the game plan being play something like a clone deserter, and then use her ability, because then you end up with a 3/4 with restore 1 on turn 1. And then, try to play this sort of like beefy early game where you're just outvaluing your opponent, and then come in the mid game with a lot of restore to kind of lock the game down, right? Because you play Ray, you're restoring for 3, at least 2 turns in theory she lives, right? You've got other stuff out there that you're buffing at the same time. Probably want to buff her to begin with, because 3/7 is the 6 flip stat line a lot of times, and she comes in as a 2/6 unless you choose her as a target for her experience token on her first attack. But the point is that, yeah, you kind of maintain the board state, be strong, lock it up later on with theoretically bigger units that you don't need to use her ability on anymore, and then the healing that comes from her and whatever else. What do you think? How would you build her?
First of all, I would build her whichever way I could, because I think that she's kind of insane for limited. She is, I think, going to be your most blanket versatile leader because she requires so little consideration with building. In many ways, what she reminds me of is she's like this set's version of Tarkin. Tarkin was always safe because all you needed was X number of Imperials so that he wasn't completely dead. And then he was just really good at smoothing out your game plan, because even if you had, subpar units, you could buff them up over time.
Yeah.
Rey also has that ability, but while she doesn't have the blanket, like I can make one, a super unit, right? Because I've had TIE fighters that were like 7/6s with Tarkin in limited. She can't do that, but she makes up for it with the restore, which is very relevant. And I think, especially when it comes to limited, where you're not going to have as good removal or as consistent removal, the thing that's going to generate nightmares for people are going to be Rey and Sundari Peacekeeper, right? Mm-hmm. That's the 1/5 Mandalorian that has Raid 2 and Restore 2. Because it has Raid 2, you can continue to buff it because the raid only triggers on attack. So you can actually make that thing become like a 3/8 before Rey can stop buffing it. And it's already got Restore 2, and then your leader has a Restore 3. It's just going to be a nightmare. So
yeah,
I expect to see a lot of Rey in limited.
Well, I talked about Moisture Farmer earlier when you opened that. Like, that's another insane card for this, right? Because you make a 1/5 with Restore 2 on turn 1, essentially, with her ability. It can still be buffed again, so then you have a 2/6 with Restore 2.
And then a 3/7.
Yeah, so just units that are very difficult to remove, and that combination of sticky units and healing is going to be pretty tough to deal with. Upgrade removal is going to be a premium, but you're in a lot of cases only going to be removing one upgrade at a time, so you can only take 1 XP off at a time. That doesn't stop them from healing themselves every turn. So yeah, she is. I think Rey's going to be a force to be reckoned with in this format for sure. All right, let's move on to Hondo Onaka. Interesting common leader. And, at first I was thinking about Hondo. His ability is when you play a card using Smuggle, you may exhaust this leader. If you do, give an experience token to a unit. And its flip side on, 5/6. Flip on 6 for 3/7 raid 1. When you play this card using Smuggle, when you play a card using Smuggle, you may give an experience token to a unit. So my initial gut reaction with this guy was, well, you're not going to be smuggling a ton early game, so in a sealed format, you're going to be kind of playing without a leader ability, for a little while first. But then I kind of I took a closer look at some of the cards that have been revealed, specifically the cards in Command, and there are a couple decent smuggle cards in Command that you can kind of play early on, actually. So there's stuff like, what is it? I'm blanking on the name right now. It is, there's units. But there's the one that lets you play a card with Ambush. And it only costs 3 with Smuggle. So again, you're going to be playing a little bit without a hero ability, but not as long as, you might. I still don't think he's going to be the strongest limited leader, but if you have the right Smuggle cards, if you have the ability to sort of sustain yourself until he kind of can get some XP on things, but it seems like a lot of ifs to make him consistent in sealed. I think you can play him, but I think there's going to be more consistent options out there. What do you think?
I don't disagree with you. I will say he's a lot more versatile than I originally thought he was. I remember when he was revealed, my initial thought was that he was only okay because I read it. I was skimming fast, mind you, but I read it as if you play a unit with Smuggle, that unit gets an experience token, but that is not the way he works. It's anytime you play any card with Smuggle, you can give an experience token to a unit. So with that in mind, I just made that Tarkin reference with Rey, and I do think that Rey is still going to be the quote unquote better Tarkin. But he is the command villainy common leader in this set, and he gives out experience tokens, and it doesn't have to be to just Imperials, but now it does have the smuggle requirement. I do think that he can fill a similar void. Where I see him being most successful, as you said, is when the games go long. The longer the game goes, if you can just stay alive and kind of play the attrition game, eventually you'll hit a point where you're hopefully extending your hand by playing a bunch of stuff with smuggle, and in doing so you're getting additional value. And if your opponent is in the same situation, then that's where you start to like eke out your value and your resources. It can also be late game a really neat combat trick where you can mess with breakpoints or get an extra damage in that you maybe your opponent was not expecting, right? Like that you kind of hid from your opponent because you could play some other smuggle thing, but the experience token still messes with their math, right?
Yeah.
That can be really relevant. So I think my short answer is I think he's better than he looks, but not as strong as some of the other common leaders.
I think you need to make sure that the smuggle cards you're playing give you immediate value that includes his ability to buff something. So the card I was thinking of earlier was Timely Intervention. That one you can smuggle out for 2, and it lets you play a card and give it ambush. And so he's also buffing it for +1. There's stuff like Weequay Pirate Gang, right, which smuggles out for 5. They're a 3/3 normally with ambush, but with him they come in as a 4/4, right, if you decide to buff them. So if, again, a lot of ifs, but if you have smuggle cards in command, in the other aspect that would benefit him, and you can use his ability right away to get an extra added benefit when you smuggle that card, whatever it is, then I think he's worth considering. But I think he's going to require a little bit more of a particular draft pool than or a sealed pool than some of the other leaders. Yeah. But
in terms of like commons that you would want to be looking for, I forget the first word, but there's a something Star Hopper that's like a 2/2 space unit, but you smuggle it for 3, and it's a common, right? So in sealed, that kind of becomes your wing leader of sorts, right? Instead of a 4/3 in stats, it's only a 3/3, but you can spread the stats out a little bit more freely, right? Because you don't have like the rebel requirement that a wing leader does. But I mean, that's still not bad, right? So like, if you open a pool and you got like 3 of those in Hondo, it might be worth a go.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be interesting. He'll require a little bit more setup, but yeah, definitely a leader to not immediately write off for sure. On to a rare leader, Jabba the Hutt. This leader I'm very excited to build around. I wonder if he's going to be actually kind of decent in sealed. Again, like I think you can use this quite a bit, right? You can build a deck that's going to be effective at trading well on the board and using those trades to cheat out higher cost units, right? So this is one of the rare leaders that I think you maybe have a little bit higher chance of playing. Just to read the card, I should read the card because we are a podcast after all. Action, choose a unit for this phase that gains bounty. The next unit you play this phase costs 1 less. So if you kill something on their side that you give this bounty to, you get to play something for 1 cheaper. Similar thing on the backside, on the flip side. Only it's 2 less instead of 1 less, so you get a bigger discount. He's also a 2/12, so in a sealed format, that's just a massive unit to just drop on the board, right? So I think that in itself has some value. Something to consider. A 2/12 is going to be very tough to deal with for your opponent, even though he does flip on 7, and that's kind of long for a sealed game. But yeah, I don't know. I think I'd probably try to play him if I did get him in my sealed pool.
Oh, I would play him for sure. I don't think 7's that long at all. I was for set 1 playing pre-release matches that I was playing Avenger in. So I think Sabine, you can get there. I mean, that's fair. Yeah, the 2/12, basically when you play him, they're going to be required to have the 6-cost vigilance card that allows you to kill any unit, because if not, you're just not defeating Jabba for a long time.
Pretty much.
And his when deploy is relevant, right? It's a capture, but also the real benefit is just giving bounties out, even if you're not using it to play a unit at a discount, which is already really strong. there's so many cards in the set that care about whether your opponent has a unit with bounty on it, whether it's from collection or there's that one unit that's like it's a 4/3, but when you play him, if your opponent has a bounty on a unit, then he comes in shielded, right? Stuff like that. And the fact that you have a leader who, even if you don't have any bounties in your hand, can just be like, nope, they have a bounty. It turns on a lot for this set. So I agree with you that this is a rare leader where I think you're going to need a lot less to take advantage of him and build around him for sealed. I'm very excited for Jabba.
I'm excited for him in sealed. I'm excited for him in constructed. I'm just excited. I want to build my my Jabba command cunning deck. Go hard on the tricks and the bounties and the scum and villainy. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm very excited about this leader. But we got to move on to one of the starter leaders, Moff Gideon, in low resolution. Whoops. Attack with a unit that costs 3 or less. If it's attacking a unit, it gets +1/+0 for this attack. And then if you flip good old Moff Gideon, he will be a 3/6 with Overwhelm, and each friendly unit that costs 3 or less just gets +1/+0 and gains Overwhelm while attacking an enemy unit, which is interesting. So, he's a starter leader. You are going to have access to both starter leaders in your sealed pools no matter what, because both him and the Mandalorian come as part of the pre-release pack. You'll get a cool alternate art version of them like you did with the Luke and Vader cards in set 1. And I think he's just like the Mandalorian, a leader that's pretty well set up for limited, pretty easy to build around, and pretty straightforward, where you're going to want to create some value trades early on, trade up with his +1 damage, and then try to establish a board so that when he does flip, you'll have a board where if they play anything, you're just going to take it out, and you're going to do a little bit of damage over the top with the Overwhelm. That's kind of the idea, I think, with him. Don't get trapped into the thinking that you have to run Imperials with him. There's not really many in the set anyway. And he's post-Empire. He's just all about survival. He's all about the underworld, so he's a good fit for this expansion, I think. And you can kind of include whatever, villainy you decide to include with him.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. It's each friendly unit. He does not care about Imperials. I also could see him being a leader that you're not immediately flipping on 5, because there might be situations or scenarios where you're looking at your hand and you might on 5 instead want to deploy a bunch of stuff and then take initiative and then just flip him on 6 and make it a nightmare. You know what I mean? So he's just very interesting. I think he's pretty dynamic. And as you said, I think that it will be easy to find decks that just work with him, because it's just around cost, and you want to low to the ground curve usually for sealed or just any limited event, because you just can't expect the game to go your way, and also you kind of want to punish your opponent for bad draws. So you're gonna have stuff that works with him at the end of the day, or at least you should.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great call out too, pointing out that it's just a blanket +1 when he's flipped, and you should maybe wait, because on the front side it's +1 for the attack when you exhaust him to do that. On the other side, if you, like you said, make sure you have a big board established, then flip him, then even if they attack into your units, they're still contending with that +1. So yeah, that is a really good call out too, is that this is a leader, one of the rare times that you might not want to flip them right away on their flip turn. So yeah, very cool. Excited to play him too. I didn't play a ton of Tarkin. I'm gonna play some Moff Gideon. Yeah. All right, let's move on to Boba Fett, Daimyo, the heroism Boba Fett. Oh yes, another common leader. When you play a unit that has 1 or more keywords, you may exhaust this leader. If you do, give a friendly unit +1/+0 for this phase. Flips on 6. Becomes a 4/7 on the ground, and then each friendly unit that has 1 or more keywords gets +1/+0. Another similar kind of situation where when you flip him, everything gets that +1/+0, because theoretically you've been building a board that has at least a keyword on every unit. So honestly, I think a lot of the stuff we just said about Moff Gideon can apply here too. He is more kind of the heroism version of that. You don't have the overwhelm, but you also don't have the restriction and cost either. So yeah, so he does have that benefit that Moff Gideon lacks. But That said, I think a lot of the stuff we just said about Moff Gideon still applies here, where maybe this is a leader that you do want to wait until you have a chance to set up a big board, then flip him and all your units get that +1.
Yeah, I think the biggest difference is just that him being one turn later means you had like one more turn to potentially go a bit wider.
Yeah.
So you are correct. I just think that you'll wait a little bit less on Boba. The main reason that I was mentioning Moff is that if you wait until your 6 resource turn, you take initiative, you flip. So as you said, your whole board gets the +1, but then also at 6, you can play 2 more 3 drops, which still meet his requirements, that sort of thing. So, yeah, but all of the things apply. Much like I was saying with Rey as well, this is another leader that just loves Peacekeeper, and that's also going to be a nightmare to deal with. So,
yep.
Yikes.
Yeah, it's going to be a strong leader. Definitely one to think about running if you open it up like you just did in one of the packs. Yeah, your first Shadows pack ever, right?
Yes,
There you go.
Had not opened any prior.
There you go. Let's move on to Hunter, another rare leader. And I mean, excuse me, this is one where I don't think you're really gonna play him in sealed a whole lot. Requires a ton of deck building, right? I mean, you need to have multiple copies with of the same unique unit, which, a lot of the unique units in this game are uncommon. So it's not impossible that you'll have a sealed pool that lets you play Hunter. But I think it is very unlikely that you will have a sealed pool where you would want to play this leader over something else. I think he's a really neat leader. I think he's going to be a leader that is going to require a lot of deck building in a constructed situation to play. But I'll read his ability just because we've been doing that with everything. Action, pay a resource, exhaust him, reveal a resource you control. If it shares a name with a friendly unique unit, return the resource to its owner's hand and put the top card of your deck into play as a resource. So a way to sort of like get back a replacement to enable other cards that we've seen that kind of play around with the same mechanic, we'll say the quote unquote clone mechanic. And then on the flip side, he's a 5/8. Overwhelm. On attack, you may reveal a resource you control. If it shares the name with a friendly unique unit, return the resource to its owner's hand and put the top card of your deck into play as a resource. So same thing, but on attack instead of as an ability. Again, I think it's a really neat ability. I think it's going to be rare when you have the sealed pool to utilize him effectively. What do you think?
I firmly agree. I think it's going to be very, very hard to have any sort of sealed pool that supports wanting to run this. But even going a step further, I was trying to quickly go through the set to see if there were any common unique units, because that's the other thing. If it was just shares the same name with a unit, then maybe you could get away with running him in sealed, and you could definitely do much better in draft, because I think about that draft where Tyler at the creator event, Tyler drafted like 6 echo based defenders or something silly.
Yeah.
But that's still not a unique unit. So I was trying to scroll through really quickly to see if there were any common unique units where if maybe in draft you could just keep picking a bunch up if you had Hunter. But as I'm looking here, most of them are all still at least uncommon, right?
Yeah.
That's going to be a problem for our friend Hunter. I just don't. The only way you're playing Hunter is if you open a ton of amazing heroism cards and you open Hunter and then 5 villainy leaders. Yeah. And even then, you're probably still just better off playing Mando, but like maybe you just really like Hunter because he's a 5/8 overwhelm, right? Like the overwhelm keyword on that body is not irrelevant. I guess there is that working in his favor, but he's going to be so hard to deck build around.
And he flips on 7 too. He flips real late. So yeah, like I said, really neat card. And this is one of the things I love about Star Wars Unlimited actually is that when you're playing a limited format, you tend to use different leaders than you would in a constructed format. So this is a great example. Deck I'm very interested in building in a constructed situation. I have basically no interest in trying to play him in limited, but that's great because then you actually get different experiences between limited and constructed. A lot of games lack that, so I think it's a good thing that we've got leaders in here. But yeah, if you open them up, set them aside for later deck building, but probably don't plan on playing them in your sealed event. Let's move on to Bosk. Spoiler alert, you're going to see a ton of Bosk in sealed. A lot of people are going to want to play. Wow, why can't I talk today? a lot of people are going to want to be playing Bosk, and here's why. Because you use him as an action, exhaust, deal 1 damage to a unit with a bounty. You may give it +1/+0 for this phase. We'll break that down in just a moment. Let's look at his flip side. Flips on 5, I believe it is. Yeah, 5. Yep. 4/6, when you collect a bounty, you may collect that bounty again. Use this ability only once each round. So both sides of this card, Charmer, have a great ability, and the leader side especially makes him an extremely versatile and extremely dangerous leader.
Yes. And then when you flip him, he has good stats for the cost. Like, he's not quite, you know, Boba Fett from set 1, but he's only 1 stat off. He's still a 4/6.
Yeah.
Bounty Hunter tag is very relevant in this set. Underworld also has applications. Yeah, you're correct. This is a great leader. I expect to see a lot of it, and both sides of the card are incredibly relevant. Bosk is to the villainy side what I think Rey is going to end up being to the heroism side. I think it will be your safest, like, I can probably build this around just about anything leader.
Yeah.
And then go from there.
I think that's very likely. You're also going to be very incentivized to place some of the units in your deck that have bounty themselves natively, so you can play aggressively with him and buff those, give them +1, and you know, do extra damage to the base or whatever, and just not care when your opponent collects the bounties. But then, yeah, being able to put bounties on your opponent and then double collect later on, like, that can be, you know, double collecting on a single bounty in a sealed environment can just be game ending, just straight up, right? Like, you use him in tandem with, you know, say, like, what, the client or something, which gives the bounty of heal 5 to a base. So you do this, you take it out, you know, in a perfect world, right? You take something out while they have the client bounty, you double collect, you get 10 health back, and your opponent's just like, well, good game. You know, it's hard to come back from that. So I think he's going to be really, really good.
Yeah, there's that. There's also the bounty where it's like you can deal 3 damage to a base if it's on a unique unit, and so if that turns into 6, that's so backbreaking and sealed.
Yep. Also, just the ability on his leader side to choose to buff your side for more damage, or ping something on their side to finish it off, or set up a future trade. You know, you can just do so much with him, and I think that's what makes him truly scary, is that he just has a lot of versatility in terms of how you apply that leader side ability. And again, like we talked about before, leaders that kind of have an always on thing, you know, are going to be really strong and sealed. And his ability I would classify as kind of always on, because you're probably going to have a way to use it every single turn, one way or another, right? Whether it's doing damage on their side or your side. So in that sense, I feel like it is kind of one of those abilities. So yeah, going to be a very strong leader. Who knew that that toe tap in Trandoshan? Is he? No, he's not Trandoshan.
Yeah, he's a Trandoshan.
Right. Okay, I got that right. Trandoshan. Toe tapping Trandoshan. Great alliteration there. On the Bridge of the Executor. Who knew? Who knew that eventually he'd be a strong leader here in Star Wars Unlimited? Yep. All right. Bosk fans knew. Moving on to Kylo Ren, a leader who wanted to be strong, but, you know, just couldn't quite get there. But I think he's going to be strong in this game, at least. Action, exhaust him, discard a card from your hand. Give a unit +2/+0 for this phase. Flips on 4. He's a 5/4, but he gets -1 strength for each card in your hand. So as aggressive can be, right? You're going to want to unload your hand as fast as possible, get him out there with the biggest stats possible, and just punch your opponent in the face as hard as you can, right? This is the sort of ultimate aggro leader in the game, I think, right now, at least in this set. So I think he's going to be sealed pool dependent again. If you have a lot of cards that are going to enable you to be very aggressive early and play out a lot of your hand early, he's going to be strong. If you don't have that, then I probably wouldn't recommend trying to play him. What do you think?
This might be a bit of a hot take. But I think that he's going to be very good even if you don't have some of the things that work directly with him. Obviously, once you go to the constructed side, he's going to benefit from, you know, cards like his ship and
It'd be much better
MIGs
there.
and some of those. Yeah, he'll be much better there. But The +2/+0 is pretty relevant, and in sealed where your card quality is not great, being able to take a card that is just dead in your hand and turn it into a temporary buff immediately upgrades the quality of your card pool, because essentially he makes your entire deck become, I play this card to give something +2/+0 on top of whatever else is printed on it, and that's pretty good. So I would be very interested in trying to play him in sealed if I opened enough stuff to just be aggressive in general and kind of take advantage of that buff.
I agree. I mean, yeah, you ask yourself, well, I've got this card in my hand. Would I rather play it out if it's mediocre in my sealed pool, or would I rather think of it as a 0 cost, give a unit +2/+0 for this phase? That's going to be a card I think you'd want to put a lot of in your deck anyway. So he does enable that. There are going to be sealed pools where you just don't have the low cost curve to run him. So don't feel like you should, even though you don't, because again, you really want to ditch your hand as fast as possible. You want to be able to flip him when you get the most benefit from him. Having him come in as like a 2/4 or a 3/4 just isn't going to be good. But I think with the fact that you get 6 packs, you usually are going to have enough units to probably try to run him. So if you get him, you should get strong consideration for sure. All right, let's move on to Bo-Katan Kryze, one of the leaders I'm very excited about trying to build in Constructed, because it's just going to be a really fun mid-rangey buff a bunch of Mandalorians, play a bunch of Mandalorians deck. Thematically, I'm just going to have a ton of fun with it. But in Sealed, we'll see. Her action is Exhaust. If you attacked with a Mandalorian unit this phase, deal 1 damage to a unit. Flips on 6 as a 4/7, and on attack, you may deal 1 damage to a unit. If you attacked with another Mandalorian unit this phase, you may deal 1 damage to a unit. So you kind of get to double up the damage when she flips. Again, barring that you attacked with another Mandalorian that phase. So, hey, if you get her, you get a ton of Mandalorians. If your curve is good, I think you could certainly find a way to play her in Sealed, but she is going to be one of the decks that's like very dependent on your Sealed pool. Obviously, if you get her, you don't get a lot of Mandalorians. You're not going to want to try to force her.
I think if you do get a decent number of Mandalorians, I think like 10 or 11 is probably your sweet spot, right?
Yeah.
She's incredible, right?
For sure.
And obviously more than 10 or 11, then all the better. Anything less than that, when you're kind of like doing the math about, are you going to draw them early enough in the game to play them and take advantage of her and be relevant? I think it's going to be a bit more difficult, but she is really good and limited because she's almost like a better Bosk, but less versatile, right? So like when you're deck building around her and you can utilize that 1 damage pretty effectively, you're going to have a great time. But unlike Bosk, you've got like this requirement fixed on her. So yeah, I think, much like we've been saying about a lot of the rare leaders, she's going to require a bit more to build around in your sealed pool.
The thing to keep in mind too is that you've got that extra hoop to jump through, where you need to play a Mandalorian unit, and then you need to have it live long enough to attack with it. There might be some ambush shenanigans you can use to sort of get around that. I think, obviously if you can run her with command and be ambushing things, try to make that a Mandalorian. I don't know off the top of my head how easy that would be. But then she gets that much more benefit. But I think about her versus Cad Bane that we're going to look at later. I think he does that kind of stuff easier. But we'll see. Like I said, if you get a lot of Mandalorians, like Charmer said, 10 or 11, and they're all in the aspect combo that you're thinking of running, you can consider her one of the rare leaders that are, probably a little bit easier to pull off, but something to think about. All right, Han Solo. Very excited about this leader, again, from a constructed side of things, and possibly from a limited side of things too, honestly. Action, Exhaust Han. Play a unit from your hand. It costs 1 less. Deal 2 damage to it. Flips on 5. Becomes a 3/6 on the ground. Action, play a unit from your hand. It costs 1 less. Deal 2 damage to it. Note that it doesn't say action and exhaust, just action, so you can theoretically do this multiple times per turn if you want to. That in itself is worth noting. But, anything that lets you cheat out stuff for cheaper is going to be pretty good in this game. So if you find a high health pool, sealed pool, if you get a lot of Wookiees in there, I would say run Han and Vigilance and go to town with those high health units. You know, just play them, buff them, benefit from the grit. I think he's a great leader.
Yeah, he opens a lot for you because let's talk about the elephant in the room, or I guess the big furry monster in the room. One, he works great with the Wookiees, right?
Oh yeah.
So if you open a bunch of Wookiees, you might want to consider playing Han Solo, and he works well with them, not just because of the grit, but because some of the better Wookiees are also more expensive, and so that cost reduction is also relevant in that regard as well.
Mm-hmm.
But he's also just good in general with any high health unit. Before we started recording, you know, you and I were talking about cards we really like from this set, and we were talking about the uncommon Cassian, right? Cassian's a 3/5, has smuggle, but costs 3. That's still great with Han Solo because you can just, take the damage on him, but play him a turn sooner. So he becomes essentially a battlefield marine with upside because if you have stuff that heals, then he goes up in value. But worst case scenario, again, you still got a 3/3 on the first turn. So if you have anything that has a high health pool, it's going to probably benefit from Han. Shielded units are another good example, right? Where if you don't really care as much about the shielded and you just want to jam something a turn sooner, you can take advantage of that as well. I just really like this leader, and I think that he's more versatile than he looks.
Yeah, totally. The more I think about Han, the more I'm like a little bit afraid of him in Constructed even. Because we all know how strong the decks around the original Han Solo got with how you can cheat things out a little bit faster. So him being able to do that at no cost to your resource pool, I think is pretty significant. It's interesting. Smuggling of a different type, I suppose. So let's move on to Cad Bane, who I think is kind of, in my mind, like one of the strongest leaders in this set, if not the strongest leader in the set. And definitely a leader you're going to want to try to play if you get the right card pool for him in sealed. I'll just read the card. When you play an underworld card, not just unit, but underworld card, you may exhaust this leader. If you do, an opponent chooses a unit they control, deal 1 damage to it. And then on the flip side, he flips on 6. Comes a 2/8 with raid 2, so he's huge. When you play an underworld card, you may choose an opponent. They choose a unit they control, deal 2 damage to it. Use this ability once each round. So a lot of people see this, I think, Charmer, and they say, well, they get to choose the unit they do it to, so it's really not that good, right? And I'm like, it's still free damage. All you have to do is just play a card. You don't have to play a unit. You just have to play an underworld card, and they take a damage on their unit. You don't pay for it. It's free. Like, it's anytime you can get free damage just for doing things in the game is super good, because that 1 damage adds up. You also have, I think, one of the rare scenarios in Star Wars Unlimited where you go to your opponent and you say, yeah, go ahead and go first. Go ahead and go first. Because they're going to play the unit. You're going to play your underworld thing on turn 1. You're going to either do a damage to it right off the bat, which is going to set you up for good trades on turn 2, theoretically. Or if they play something with 1 health, you just kill it because it's their only unit and they have to do a damage to it. So he's so good that I think we're going to see him used a lot. I do think people are going to underestimate his ability. At the same time, when you flip him, he attacks for 4. He's got 8 health. He's just massive for a 6 flip too. And then you get the extra damage buff, right? So I don't know about you, Charmer, but like I seriously think this might be the best leader in the set.
I don't think he's the best, but he's probably top 3. And in limited, if you open enough underworld stuff, he's just an absolute monster. Specifically, I think the cards that you're looking for, like in the common slots, are stuff like Cloud Rider, right? The 3/1 with ambush, because that can really force your opponent into some tough decisions about where they want to put the damage.
Yep.
Because you get to decide your target with the ambush after they've placed the damage, right? You get to choose that order of operations. The other bit is I'm drawing a blank on the name, but it's a 2/1 1-drop Underworld unit. It's got the Rhodian flexing in the picture. The name is escaping me.
Oh,
That one is also great.
Hired Muscle, right? Or something like
Yeah,
that. It's something really
like
obvious.
Yeah, but that
Yeah.
one's also fantastic. Any of these cheap things where it's like, hey, I can, just pay one and then force you to put a damage somewhere while also kind of stalling and then being reactive is so strong. But you touched on the other thing that I think is really important. This has 8 health and essentially swings for 4. So this is, for the most part, like a 4/8 that is coming down on 6, which is another really big deal in limited.
Yeah, it's only 1 more health than the average 6, flip, which is a 4/7. But that 1 health can make a big difference, as you'll see trading wise, right? Kintan Intimidator is another one I was thinking of with Cad Bane, where it's an Underworld card, 1 for a 1/4, on attack exhausts the defenders. So just a great common card to begin with, but then also super crazy with Cad Bane. So yeah, there's a lot to think about with this one. If I get Cad Bane, I'm gonna be really, really hoping I get enough Underworld cards to play him, and there's a ton of Underworld cards in this set, so it's not unlikely. I would say this is going to be probably one of the leaders we see the most, but we'll see. Anyway, I'm a big Cad Bane fan now, apparently. I've not watched I have watched the shows he's in. I was like, oh, it's a cool character, but now I'm a big Cad Bane fan. Let's move on to Dr. Afra, Rapacious Archaeologist. When the regroup, another rare leader. When the regroup phase starts, discard a card from your deck. Interesting. Flips on 5 for a 2/5. While there are 5 or more different costs among cards in your discard pile, this unit gets +3/+0, so it'd make her 5/5 then. When deployed, choose 3 cards in your discard pile with different names. If you do, return one of them at random to your hand. So, again, I feel like this is going to be another leader that you're going to want to think of more in a constructed setting. In a sealed format, I get concerned about having to discard a card every turn and then, getting to get one of them back when she deploys. I meant to go back there. On 5, you're going to be down a lot of cards. You don't even get to choose which card you get back. You get like a 1 out of 3 chance. She's only a 5/5 on 5, so she gets outclassed numbers wise by a lot of cards. So
and she's likely, I'm going to be honest, she's likely not even going to be a 5/5 because, as you noted, you have to get one of the cards back, and it's also on regroup phase, right? So by the time that you are looking to flip her, even if you have played cards from your hand and had her ability trigger, you might only have 6 or 7 cards in the discard pile.
Yeah.
And of those 6 or 7 in a sealed environment or a limited environment, what are the chances that they're all different costs? And then you're also going to have to put one of them back in your hand. So it's very unlikely if you're playing her on curve, deploying her on curve, that she would even be the 5/5. I love this leader for deck building, and she makes me very excited for future sets because I love stuff that interacts with the discard pile in general. But I do not think she is a good limited leader because, as you said, the discard from a deck is such a liability. And with nothing else in the set that's really letting you take advantage of your discard pile, it's just one of those like, why? But in constructed, I'm very excited to try her out and brew with her going forward.
Yeah, and again, I mean, a lot of the rare leaders seem to have that flavor to them, right? Where it's like, this is a card that's going to require some interesting theory crafting around building in a constructed sense. But in a sealed pool, yeah, she might be the worst leader in sealed or in limited in this set. But in constructed, there probably are going to be a lot of cool options, especially like you said, as the card pool deepens with more expansions coming out. But yeah, probably one you can just sort of set aside for later if you pull her in one of the sealed packs. All right, moving on to Fennec Shand, Honoring the Deal. Cunning Heroism, action, 1 cost, exhaust, play a unit that costs 4 or less from your hand, paying its cost. Give it ambush for this phase. That's kind of good. She flips on 5, then has Saboteur, comes in as a 4/4, so a little bit weaker on the stats, but again, Saboteur. And action, play a unit that costs 4 or less from your hand, paying its cost, give it ambush for its face. So now you don't have to pay extra. You can just pay the cost. It's just an action. You can do it more than once per turn.
Yeah.
So she could, I think this is another leader that could end up being pretty crazy, both in limited and in constructed.
This was when you were like, I think Cad Bane might be the best leader. The only reason that I was not fully agreeing is because Fennec Shand exists.
I think that's.
I don't
it's a
know which
reasonable
one
take.
is going to come out on top, but I think she's so strong in limited and has a lot of potential even in constructed. But like in limited, being able to turn almost any of your resources into potentially removal, that's such a big deal. I cannot stress it enough. Like she is just good. And the thing is you don't have to build around her, much like we were saying with Moff Gideon, where it's like you're just going to want to play low cost units anyway.
Yeah.
This is the same thing, but with a higher threshold. It's 4 or less. So if you can't find value out of playing your units that cost 4 or less, then like what are you even
Your seal pool
doing?
must be terrible. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, she's great. You know, obviously paying, essentially always having an invisible card in your hand when she's on her leader side that says pay 1, give a unit ambush, you know, that you're playing this turn. That's in itself, you know, we all know how strong, you know, Energy Conversion Laboratory was as that command base in set 1, right? That base is pretty strong. Imagine having that base kind of always around, you know, and not taking the health hit to play it too. So, and not being locked into the command aspect. So, yeah, she's a great leader. I would agree top 3. I still feel like Cad Bane's a little bit better. A lot of that's because of the Underworld synergy, but man, in Sealed and in Constructed, I think she's going to be a monster. So definitely a leader if you pull her where you're like, all right, I'm going to really look hard to see if there's a way I can build her. And like you said, you can just play good cards. Just take your best cards that are in aspect for whatever you have, attach whatever side aspect you need to get the rest of your other good non-cunning cards in there. And she'll, you know, if she's piloted well, she'll be very effective. So very cool. Very neat leader. Very, very scary leader. Moving on to Lando Calrissian with impeccable taste. Action Exhaust Lando. Play a card using Smuggle. It costs 2 less. Defeat a resource you own and control. Another rare leader. So here's where we get into kind of the funky territory as well, where things get a little bit wacky with deck building and gameplay loops. If you flip him, he's a 2/5, and then you have just an action. No exhaust involved. You can do it multiple times per turn. Play a card using Smuggle. It costs 2 less. Defeat a resource you own and control. Use this ability only once each round. So never mind. You just don't exhaust him, so you can attack with him. You can still only do it once per round. But that said, you know, a lot of times the Smuggle cost is 2 or greater. So this is a way to just sort of mitigate that Smuggle cost entirely. Is it worth losing a resource to do it? That is debatable. Again, it depends on the board state, depends on your sealed pool. This is one Charmer where I feel like it's unlikely you're going to run him in sealed, but with the perfect card pool, with the perfect Smuggle cards, maybe.
Yeah, the big thing with him is that you want to have high impact and usually slightly expensive Smuggle cards because you want to be enticed to play them cheaper to make him worth your time. 2 things come to mind when I think about Lando from like a sealed perspective. First is I'm comparing him to Hondo, where Hondo is like, I get to do the Smuggle thing, but I just get an inherent benefit. Lando is not just inherent benefit. Like it's a benefit, but at a cost, right? Yeah. So you kind of have to weigh those. The other thing is we were just talking about her. Fennec Shand exists and is a common. So like, unless you open Lando and don't open a Fennec, and you really want to play these aspects, then maybe you start considering Lando. But at common, there is what I think for sealed anyway, a far better leader choice that requires a lot less deck building considerations, and that alone really hurts his value.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you can do stuff like, you know, smuggle out Cash and Andor for a 3/5, which is great, but you lose a resource. You know, he does get readied, so that's one of the, you know, higher end examples of the benefit from Lando. But yeah, again, I think you need to, like you said, not have a better heroism cunning leader, not have a Fennec Shand, and then get just the perfect sealed pool with a bunch of good Smuggle to use with him. So neat card, and again, something you can deck build around, but probably not going to be you know, a big limited hitter. But man, I think about like Lando with like tech and constructed, that could get kind of wild. So I think there's some fun stuff you could do with him. Moving on.
We go from Lando to Mando.
That's right. The Mandalorian. This is the way. You're always going to have access to the Mandalorian. He is one of the starter leaders, so him and Moff Gideon are going to be there in their cool alt art form in your sealed box. And when you, his ability is quite strong, I think, actually. When you play an upgrade, you may exhaust this leader. If you do, exhaust an enemy unit with 4 or less remaining HP. Flips on 6, becomes a 4/7. When you play an upgrade, you may exhaust an enemy unit with 6 or less remaining XP. So you can do it multiple times per turn because you don't have to exhaust them anymore to do it. So right away, I think we compare him to Thrawn, you know, and the ease in which you can use do exhausting with Thrawn. Thrawn is pretty easy to exhaust things with. Mandalorian obviously is potentially easier, but you need to be able to play an upgrade. That said, there's no requirements that it needs to be a friendly upgrade or something like that. So this can be bounties. This can be upgrades on your units. So again, if you get a card pool with a lot of either bounties or upgrades or enough of a mix of them combined with units you want to run, I think he's worth taking a look at. Exhausting unit is always going to be strong. So I'd say he's definitely in the tier of, you know, always be thinking about running Mando.
And also just another nail in the coffin for poor Lando, right?
Yeah,
because even if you don't open Fennec, as far as the pre-release goes, you'll always have access to this. Now, it is worth noting, if you're watching this in the future and you're playing sealed, that's not a part of the pre-release. Technically, you don't have access to this because it doesn't, you know, the pre-release kits come with special stuff, right? So that's a weird situation. But for the most part, and for everybody who's watching this leading into the release of Shadows of the Galaxy, you're going to have access to Mando, which is another detriment to our poor friend Lando, even if he does have impeccable taste.
Yep, that's right. So Mando over Lando, it seems like in sealed at least, you know, but definitely a card to consider. And I believe that's it. Yeah,
that was it.
Back to Gar Saxon's lovely face as we end our review of you know, what you're going to want to be thinking about when you're thinking about choosing a leader for sealed. And hopefully that's just a good primer for you. Obviously, there's a lot more depth that could be gone into. We'll go into a little bit of that depth in the near future, where we open up an actual sealed event pack that Charmer just got in the mail, talk about what deck we would choose to build out of it, and then kind of go through step by step the process of you know, organizing things and figuring it out. I'm looking forward to shooting that. That's going to be a lot of fun.
I can't wait. And this was really poorly timed for me because I was like excited, but now I'm so excited to play in a pre-release that I'm like upset I don't have one this weekend. I know, so now right? It's just going to draw it out even further. But
same. I gotta wait until next Friday.
Yeah, I have mine on Saturday. I'll be visiting friends in Ohio, so I actually don't get to play in my local one, which makes me sad. But I'll be playing in Ohio because I'm not going to miss one. I'm going to make sure I get it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm doing broadcasting all day for an esports thing, and as soon as it ends in there, I'm going to jump in my car and run off to my local and get there just in time to play in the sealed event there. So that'll be a ton of fun. Hopefully open a Cad Bane or a Fennec Shan, I think. Yeah, well, on that note, I check out or look for the mailbag episode. We're going to be back on track with those. Make sure you leave your questions in the Discord for the mailbag thing. Check out our Patreon. I'm going to be writing an article that's a little bit more in depth about you know, what you want to build with leaders. We're going to be kind of going over the starters and the commons because, again, for the most part, the rare ones aren't as much in the consideration. So check that out. And aside from that, anything else you want to add to that?
Not to that. Okay. I guess before we go, I know that you are short on time. Do we want to open one more pack? Because I went and I looked.
Yeah.
And we are free to share anything we received in this. We actually got the go ahead 5 days ago. It's just that I only got the package today. So it's fair game. If we open something that hasn't been revealed,
we should check our email. Hey, let's do it.
Just do it.
Let's do it.
So,
all right.
I'll let you pick. We had 2 other choices we hadn't. Well, we did Boba Fett, right?
Yeah, I talked about.
It's got to be.
I talked about being excited about Bo-Katan anyway, so let's do Bo-Katan this time.
Let's do the Bo-Katan one. All right, here we go. Bo-Katan pack.
All right. Paper pack.
Yeah, Lando is the other one. All right, so again, no look, just in case there's a.
Hey, it's Bosk.
Oh, not a showcase, but we get a Bosk.
Hey, there he is. Yeah.
All right.
What a Bosk.
Bosk, again, great sealed choice.
Ooh.
Oh, a hyperspace Jabba's palace,
Nice. That looks great.
which I'll flip
right.
over to the other side here as well. So it's a little blurry, but the hyperspace new shield token
Sick.
looks pretty good.
Looks like a grappling arm. I don't remember the exact
yes,
name of that card.
the Van Brace grapple shot.
That's what it is. Yep.
Is what that one is. And then we have the capturing hunter, right? Discerning veteran.
Yeah.
That is a bounty hunter.
What do we have there?
So this is the detention block rescue. This is the thing where if something is
yeah.
captured, you can get it back. Well, it's deal 3 damage to a unit, but if that unit is guarding any captured cards, deal 6 instead.
Warzone Lieutenant there too.
Yep.
One for a
Warzone
2/2.
Lieutenant, just a standard 1 for a 2/2 trooper. And then we have the Sentinel, right? The smuggling Sentinel, the Vigilant Pursuit Craft.
Oh, hyperspace.
And then another hyperspace. So still 2 hyperspace so far here.
Nice.
This one is the Clan Ren Rescuer.
Hey, what's that doing in there? Hey, it's a surprise strike. Well, we know a couple of cards have been reprinted, but there's a familiar face. We love that card, so it's okay.
Interesting that that popped up. Cloud Rider.
Yeah.
Right. We were just talking about the importance of that potentially. Hey, another reprint.
Yeah, there we go.
World Thug.
All right. Oh,
Millennium Falcon. I opened a legendary, right? Oh no, that's right. This is an uncommon in this set.
Still good though. Still good.
Still good. Yeah. Still good. Then we also have the Enforced Loyalty. Defeat a friendly unit to draw 2 cards.
All right.
And then this is the what is it? The Brutal Traditions that I'm a big fan of. And then for our rare,
there you go.
Excuse me, not
what is a legendary?
Yeah. It is a legendary. It is Final Showdown. So this is the ready each unit you control at the start of the regroup phase. You lose the game.
I love it. You gotta win or die.
Love it.
Yeah, that is a great card.
And then the so the foil is a foil rare in Cobb Vanth. So this had 2 hyperspaces, a legendary and a foil rare.
Wow. All right. 6-second pack.
That is a banger pack. Yeah.
That is exciting.
Can't be upset at that at all.
Yeah. All right.
All right.
Well,
nothing new, but
not yet.
Good
not
stuff.
Yet. Well, maybe in our sealed pool video, we'll unveil something that has not been seen before. We'll wait and see. Try to get that recorded in the next day or two. Get that up ASAP. But I think that's about it for the episode today. Hopefully everyone's a little bit more primed for their pre-release next weekend. But until then, Charmer, say the magic words.
May the Force be with you.